Hello? um, I guess I'm not totally sure if this is up and running. Uh, um, I'm watching the chat, so... Oh, okay, there we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to a guided tour of Sudra. Before we begin, I do want to let everyone know, if you are concerned about spoilers for Axiom Verge, you should probably not watch this presentation, because we will be covering almost the entire plot of the game. Secondly, there is right now, as you can see, the feed is frozen. It is still. You'll see that happen a couple of times over the course of this as I use a little bit of extra universal magic to show you things that you would not normally be able to see. I also finally want to let everyone know that not everything in the lore of Axiom Verge is spelled out, so some of these things will be my own opinions and speculation. I do see our resident lore master, Angie, in the chat. So, Angie, I apologize if I get anything wrong. Please don't correct me during the presentation. It will be, I think, a little bit more seamless if we just kind of go through, and it's okay if I get things a little bit wrong. With that in mind, I do want to tell you first about Sudra a little bit. A long time ago, in the distant reaches of the universe, the multiverse, not really clear, was a technologically advanced society on the world of Sudra, surrounded by an impenetrable vastness, not of space, but of a sort of primordial chaotic void known as Breach. Using a device known as the Breach Attractor, the people of Sudra made their world into a hub of sorts, allowing passage between worlds separated by breach by forming passageways to Sudra and from Sudra. At some point in Sudra's past, a great war occurred, and people with powerful reality-altering abilities, known as pattern minds, used Sudra's technology to fight terrible battles. And the civilization of Sudra fell into a religious period where technology was regarded as forbidden. And priests and priestesses ruled the people of Sudra. Transport between worlds ceased. And the purposes and understandings of what these machines were disappeared over time. 1,000 years ago was the last time someone from Earth traveled to Sudra. A man by the name of Athatos, who you will learn more about as we proceed through the world. But now, for the first time in quite some time, it is all of you who will be the next representatives from Earth on Sudra. We arrive in Eribu. Please say hello to your tour driver, Trace. Trace will be guiding us through the world of Sudra. Eribu means entrance in the Sudran language. And many years ago when Athatos first appeared on Sudra, he appeared wounded, blinded, and confined to a wheelchair here. The place that we start is a room known as a rebirth chamber. This egg stores the memories and the genetic code of anyone who enters it, as well as restoring their physical health completely. And it is through these that Athatos regained his sight, his ability to walk, and everything that had been lost to him before. In order to navigate the tunnels of Erebus, we will need this, the Axiom Disruptor. This weapon, only usable by pattern mines, fires a blast of energy that destroys the underlying assumptions that the universe makes about whatever it touches, more or less, with some exceptions, as you can see. With this in tow, we are able to move through the caverns of Erebus. Before we move on, I want to point out this red growth along these caverns. This is an entity known as red bubble block. Red bubble block is almost like a fungus. It grows in many places in Sudra. It can be destroyed, but it grows back after not too long. It's organic after a fashion, and it won't grow back if something occupies the space that it is around. That is, it won't grow back on top of something, but simply wait to occupy that space until later. Red bubble block is an extremely strange substance, but it has found a natural home on Sudra. We see plenty of pockets of it here, some of which are small enough not to have grown into full blocks. Here we find our first friend in the world of Sudra. Not really a friend, but our first piece of fauna. This is the red nautilus. The red nautilus moves along the surface of anything that it hangs out on and simply continues moving in a counterclockwise pattern, or clockwise pattern in some cases. I suppose actually this is a clockwise pattern, until it can't. Now, since red bubble block can be destroyed, a red nautilus can actually be rendered a little bit confused by blowing out the blocks, at which point it will simply rotate in place until it has something to stand on again. Now, many of the creatures in Sudra have code names, as he likes to call them. I prefer to call them nicknames, that Trace has given to them. And the red nautilus is referred to as Snailborg. Snailborg. Now, unfortunately, if we wanted to explore more of the world of Erebus, we see a dead end. And up this vertical shaft, we find a laser barrier. Now, there are switches here, but we can't reach them. So we'll have to go looking for some tools elsewhere. And if we climb this shaft all the way up to its top, we'll see another laser barrier and another switch that we can't access, and a passageway off this way. And past some more of our friends Snailborg, we will meet the next piece of flora and fauna in the world of Sudra. Please say hello to the hive and to its purple wasps. Purple wasps circle around their hive aggressively, spitting stingers out. Their stingers are made of energy. As you can see, they flash as they fly through and do quite a bit of damage to anything that it touches. Stone is more or less immune to the stingers, but any organic matter is severely damaged by it. And if you look closely at the hives from which they emerge, you can see that these hives are outgrowths of the same material that makes out red bubble block. There are supposed to be a few more options on that poll, but thank you all for voting on your favorite cephalopod. Now, in order to progress, we are going to, unfortunately, blow up our hive and wasp friends, and continue moving on. Touching wasps and touching hives does do damage, as you might expect, to our friend Trace. But whenever Trace takes damage as a pattern mind, he is able to shield himself briefly, and become invulnerable. Now, at the top of this passageway, at the top of this passageway, we find another program for the Axiom Disruptor, known as the Nova. Bullets fired from the Nova are large and travel in a straight line, but may be detonated into 6 smaller explosive bullets that travel a short way before detonating. The Nova has a particular and important use, which is to hit switches that we would not otherwise be able to strike. Now, at this point, we could climb back down the shaft that we came from, but being able to weave the reality of the universe, we can simply bring ourselves back to the place that we started. Warping back to the rebirth chamber takes us back to the bottom of the shaft faster than we would have otherwise been able to make it, and prevents us from having to retread dangerous ground with low health. With the Nova in tow, we now have unlocked the ability to press switches, which is very important. And with this, we can proceed to another area of Erebus. Now, because this is a guided tour, I do want to show you every last little bit of Erebus. And so I will be going out of my way to fill out all of the map squares on the auto map. This is another rebirth chamber, and its presence here presages something somewhat ominous. In the fabric of the universe, there are monsters, or entities, hostile beings, foes, if you will, that are of a different caliber than the native flora and fauna of Sudra. And they are preceded by these. This symbol and this kind of room is known as a foyer. It is literally called a boss foyer in the game code. Let me give you that little tidbit. And this is our first adversary, Sudra. Sudra, although it has its own name and its own existence, is a clone, an altered clone of Athetos, the first Earthling to arrive on Sudra 1,000 years ago. Sudra is not that bright, mostly just hovers around its chamber, back and forth, firing bullets and dropping bombs. But it is important to know that these variants have a consciousness. They're still sentient. But at this point in their biomechanical deterioration, they only know one thing: a command to kill demons. Unfortunately for them, and for us, they don't really know what a demon is, and so they attack us indiscriminately. We will see more of these variants as time goes on. Behind Sudra, we have the drill, the laser drill. As you can see, this allows us to bust through blocks that otherwise would be impenetrable to us. The laser drill, in addition to doing this simple and somewhat obvious function, also is capable of, as you might expect, damaging anything that we find that would otherwise take damage from our weapons. I almost forgot. This little fellow right here is a purple scissorbeak. Purple scissorbeaks hide out, snapping their jaws in the walls and waiting for something to come into their line of sight. And when it does, they do that. They just jump out at them across to the wall across the way, at which point they wait again for another opportunity to strike their prey. Purple scissorbeaks are part of a family of scissorbeaks that exist all throughout Sudra. And they all have roughly the same behavior and the same predation habits. And now with our drill in tow, we are able to descend to the lower parts of Erebus, where we will find more purple scissorbeaks. We can get a better look at them here. And a lone green cephalopod. This is a green cephalopod. Well, it was a green cephalopod. Green cephalopods are very aggressive. They float through the air, wiggling their tentacles, and periodically shooting blue beams of energy. There are not many of them on Sudra, so I feel a little bit bad fighting my way through an endangered species. But unfortunately, in order to give you an appropriate tour, we will have to survive. Now, this little spiral nugget, our good little spiral friend, is named Spiru. Spiru just hangs out in its little shell, bouncing to and fro and all around, and it never does anything differently. They're not particularly dangerous. They simply bounce around. They're quite slow. And they're just fun to watch. I find the spiraling of the Spiru to be extremely tranquil, and I don't know, you may feel the same. Off to the side over here, there is a little bit of a branch to a different part of Sudra, which we can't quite access. But you can see that there are some crosses in the pollination of what lives in different parts of Sudra. This area is more watery and has more of coral fauna in it. And before we proceed, and honestly, it is an oversight on my part not to point this out. This material here is breach. This staticky, flickering stuff is breach. We can't pass through it. If we were able to fit through the small tunnel there and touch it, it would injure us. Over here in this corner room of Spiru, we find parts of the universe that are not quite right, shall we say. You could call them glitched, if you wanted to, but they're impassable, and we'll have to revisit them at a later point in time. This shaft down to the lower part of Erebus, there are parts of Erebus that I will not show you right now because we will be returning here later, leads over to this, a health node. A health node is a piece of technology that improves the physical robustness of its bearer. It increases the amount of damage that its bearer can take by a fixed amount into health, hit points, if you will. And so Trace, as he exists, starts with 200 health hit points, and every health node that he picks up will give him an additional 100 health. Now that we have left Erebus, we are in a new area. You can see there are more red bubble blocks and more red nautiluses here, but there are also blue nautiluses. These are also referred to as snailborgs. However, to differentiate them from the red snailborgs, blue snailborgs have the meta tag attached to them in Trace's nicknames for them, or code names, I suppose, if you were to prefer. Absu in the Sudran language means ocean. And it's not too hard to see that this portion of the world has a more moist feeling to it. And I feel odd saying the word moist like that, but there you have it. I do want to point out this walking shrub here. Oh, the timer is all glitched because, yes, because of the... I have a system running that will allow me to show things that won't otherwise be able to be seen. Because the world gets confused sometimes and we have to give it a helping hand. The walking shrub walks back and forth, as you can see, and spits out these blue spores, which will damage anything that they touch. There's nothing actually otherwise particularly interesting about the walking shrubs. They are, in some estimations of the world, Trace's nickname for them is a mushroom poof. They do look a little mushroomy. But that's really all that they do. This poor soul is a brown ghoul. Brown ghouls are mutated Sudrans. They've been afflicted by a pathogen that has turned them into mindless zombies that run, attack, and attempt to feed. We'll be trying, to the best of our ability, not to disturb these tortured souls any more than we need to, by provoking them to jump over us a little bit and then running away from them. They're very fast, though. Oh. In this room, we see one of my favorite enemies, the pink giant diatom. These bouncing Fruit Loops move around the chamber in much the same way as Spearows do, but they look delicious. I want to eat one. It's like a candy or a breakfast cereal. Pink diatoms are actually very interesting in a way that we won't see for quite some time, or at least for a little time. But we will come back and revisit them later. The shaft down here leads to the first of one of our friends, Forbidden Cheerios, yes. Friend is perhaps a strong word. A species, if you will, of war machines, sentient war machines, known as, well, in fact, they're known by many names, but one of the names, the name that they are most known by, is Rusalki. Rusalki is actually a Russian word. A rusalka is a water spirit of sorts. In Eastern European folklore. And so these are, it is one of many names for these creatures. In particular, this Rusalka, her name is Elsinova. Currently, she lies asleep, mostly. Her power source has been poisoned. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask people in chat to not ask about the technical details of the tool that I'm using or the speedrun mode, because I don't want to get distracted from the tour itself. Please enjoy the greater theme of the presentation. In Elsinova's chamber, we find another sub-program for the Axiom Disruptor, the Kilver. This is a short-range lightning blast that does quite a bit of damage. Now, unfortunately, because Elsinova is asleep, we do not have much to discuss with her. Did poll number 3 run? I think I missed it. In any event, this is a good time to talk about a coyote jump. In a small, brief window of time after walking off a platform, our dear pattern mind is capable of jumping in midair. And if done right, this will enable us to leap under Elsinova's chin without stopping. Otherwise, we would have to come down and come up. And if it is not done right, then it results in a bonk and a fall. But when done correctly, we see chin jump. Beneath Elsinova's home, if you can call it a home, are the prisons of Old Sudra. In this place, we find more of our unfortunate ghoul friends, and we can begin to see what happened to the Sudran people. Skeletons inside cages and caverns, empty terminals sat unmanned, and now we enter the catacombs. At some point after Athatos arrived on Sudra, he found a wonderful paradise outside of Sudra, full of technology that could end war and hunger and sickness on Earth. And he wanted to pursue it, to take that technology and bring it back to Earth. But it was not possible to pass from Sudra to any other world because of the breach, and because of the prohibition on using any of the old machines. The Sudrans would not let Athatos pass, and over time he became bitter and decided that it was important enough that he would fight his way through the entirety of the Sudran people, and to do this, he unleashed a horrible pathogen upon them, a biological weapon that did not decimate but completely eradicated the Sudran people. Those who are not left as ghouls are here in the catacombs. We will not meet any Sudrans during our tour. They're gone. As we emerge from the catacombs, we return to a more organic section of Absu and find ourselves in another foyer, preceding the second of Athatos' clones and variants, Telal, whose name means warrior. And although Telal is a bearer of armor and powerful weapons, he is more of a tank than he is of a fighter. And by using our ability to become invulnerable for brief periods of time, to pass behind him, we're able to fight him with no fear, no danger, and really quite quickly. Farewell, Telal. Although you were mighty, in the end, your Achilles' heel proved your downfall. Telal, as a warrior, was guarding an important artifact. The address disruptor. If the world can be thought of as a program running on a computer of some sort, the address disruptor is a device for corrupting its memory. Through the use of the address disruptor, we are able to turn completely unusable bubbles into floating platforms and ride them up. Many more things in the world can be glitched with the use of the address disruptor. As you see, when using it to corrupt red Nautilus or blue Nautilus, they become frozen in place, twitching as though they had no platform to move on. not being able to turn around is a significant disability. Now, if I corrupt the hive and the wasps will attempt to dive at me instead of firing their stingers, and the hive, instead of spewing wasps, will spew health at me. And the corrupted behavior of the different enemies, the different creatures on Sudra is both interesting and useful. As I mentioned, the pink diatoms have quite some usefulness in that they can bust through blocks that we would normally have to drill through with little effort, and in fact are capable of busting through some blocks that we wouldn't be able to drill through at all. With this, we are able to find a range node, which is an item that allows us to fire our weapons farther than we would otherwise have been able to. With this, we've collected most of what we need in Absu to move on. No love for Sour Patch Kids. Our favorite chewy candy is Starburst. Well, many enemies in this game prefer gushers. As you can see, these Sudran squids, and in fact they are called Sudran squids, the Trace's name for them is a quadrupus, drop gushers on us, which explode when they hit the ground. These gushers are not delicious, and unfortunately, with our address disruptor, we are not actually able to corrupt the Sudran squid. Now, I will go ahead and destroy this to get it out of our way, and we can talk a little bit about this little green creature who is here. This little green creature is a green glider. Green gliders move up and down in place between the ceiling and the floor, as you see. They're quite potent in that they deal a fair amount of damage to anything that they touch. And additionally, if you glitch one of them, you corrupt all of them, and if you, after doing so, destroy any single one of them, they all explode, doing damage to anything around them, including things that are aggressive toward Trace. What is a bonkers? That's an excellent question. Bonkers was a candy in the 80s and 90s. It had it was a chewy candy the whole way through, but the exterior of it was a different flavor from the interior of it. And you could see the interior on the outside of it. It was kind of like a flat square shape. And so you could see the center flavor of it and also the outside flavor. They've been discontinued for quite a long time, and nobody makes them anymore. So unfortunately, no bonkers. Proceeding through a little bit farther, we see these, they're not squids exactly. They are, these are called jellyfish. A fun fact is that in keeping with somewhat of the mushroom theme of this area, these are actually, Trace's nicknames for these are fungines, fungus-like things. When corrupted, they don't do anything different except they stop firing their projectiles, but otherwise they float in midair and fire 3 upward projectiles, 1 straight up, 2 diagonally, 1 out left and 1 out right. So we proceed further into the depths of Absu. These aquatic corridors are mostly just passageway on our way to the next portion of Sudra, Before we leave, we'll be stopping to pick up one more item that will help us navigate a little bit better. A power node. You may be unsurprised to learn this, but power nodes increase the outgoing damage of Trace's weaponry, and they also increase the speed at which the laser drill drills through blocks. We've now entered Z, which is the technological center, if some such thing could be said to exist, of Sudra. And here we have these, I'm going to dispense with this, roly-poly sort of enemies, sort of creatures. I keep calling them enemies, which is not really a good way to refer to them. They are green rollers. The green roller, I call it a roly-poly, has the nickname Rug, which is a little weird. It's not something that you would throw on your floor if you could prevent it. And it bounces around and jumps whenever it sees something that it wants to aggress, but otherwise does not do anything particularly dangerous. However, these, on the other hand, scorpiants, that's right, they're scorpiants, will move back and forth, firing 3 projectiles in front of them whenever they see something that they are threatened by, in particular, Trace. When corrupted, scorpiants only fire 1 projectile. In addition, they drop these nano healing... They drop health. They drop restorative liquid. I don't really know what you'd call it. I did not showcase what happens to the green rollers when they're corrupted before, so let me go ahead and do that. As you can see, when corrupted, they begin moving at significantly less speed, roughly 50%. The upper chambers of Z are not reachable to us right now. We are going to proceed on through past these rugs, these green rollers, and up to the anthill. The anthill is so named because it is a tall vertical shaft filled with scorpions. There are a few green rollers here and there, but mostly we just have scorpions. And because we have this convenient ventilation shaft on the side, we can avoid dealing with the ants, as they are quite dangerous. As we enter this room, we find our very first instance of an orb wall. The orb walls are immobile. They fire orbs of energy and are only vulnerable at the orb in the center of them. Additionally, in this portion of Z, we find not only orb walls, but hopping spiders, who will hop around and fire gushers at us, as well as these tunnel hoppers, or as Trace calls them, prongfish. Prongfish are extremely dangerous, and will only begin hopping when approached. It can be difficult to move past them without destroying them, so unfortunately we are going to be doing so. One interesting thing to note about hopping spiders, they do look like dragonflies. I agree. One interesting thing to note about hopping spiders is that if a person is low on health and destroys a hopping spider, the hopping spider will drop health for them. All right. Behold the yellow sea sponge, or, as Trace likes to call it, the tube worm, or as I like to call it, demon coral. The yellow sea sponge spews out these little wiggly worm things that fly in random directions. Those little wigglers are the only true source of randomness in the world of Sudra. Everything else is somewhat deterministic, but those little wigglers are actually random. It's a little strange to think of, that everything else in the world could be so well understood, and that there can be one thing like that that is chaotic and impenetrable. This entryway takes us out of Z and into Kur. Kur is the home of the dead, which is a little weird because all of the dead are housed in Absu. Kur is a mountainous region of Sudra, stretching up all the way to the upper reaches of Sudra's natural features. And at the top of Sudra is a temple, which we will find later. In this vertical shaft full of lasers, we find ourselves harkening back to Mission Impossible. And so this room has come to be known very casually by Trace as Mission Impossible. We proceed on from Mission Impossible and find, I didn't even talk about our friends here, the laser urchins. As you can see, laser urchins move along much like the Nautiluses do, simply crawling along whatever surface they are on. However, if they approach something that they deem a threat, they will fire a laser. When corrupted, that laser no longer injures the person who corrupted them. It instead will injure everything else in its surroundings, and it can also be used to break through blocks in walls, even ones that the laser drill would not be able to penetrate. In this room, we find red wasps. There are not many red wasps on Sudra. They wait for a chance to dive and sting their prey, and when corrupted, they merely float away, harmless and ethereal. In somewhat of an unfortunate naming convention, this room, which holds red krill, jumping red krill, who fire gushers, this room has become known as the Juicy Room. It's a little gross, but it is what it is. And buried in a small cache underneath the Juicy Room is another piece of Sudran technology, the Field Disruptor. The Field Disruptor changes gravity around Trace and enables him to jump higher and access places that he could not access before. Rather than walking back, we will use our ability to transport ourselves quickly back to any rebirth chamber to go pursue a little bit more of Z. Now, before, we were locked off from seeing much of Z. Oh, I forgot to talk a little bit about these. These little weeds here slow down your movement, slow down the movement of anything that passes through them. They're known as dragweed. They can be destroyed, much like the red bubble block can be destroyed, but they'll grow back after a short period of time. If we stand here and wait, we see that the dragweed simply grows itself back. And we were unable to come up here before into the upper part of Z because it was simply too high for us. But now we can cut our way into a room of dragweed and hopping spiders and bubbles, just so many bubbles, and explore a little bit more into Z. Now, as I mentioned before, Z has what could be called the technological heart of Sudra, of old Sudra. And in fact, in Z, there is a power source and power filter for the Rusalki. It is in this area, full of ventilation fans and steamworks and very technological looking blocks, that we find ourselves in the next foyer, ahead of the guardian of the power filter. This is Uruku. Uruku appears quite fearsome. But like our warrior Tellal before, there is a place that you can land where an opponent who cannot move has no way of attacking you. And Uruku, who has sat here silent and wrathful for who knows how long, can finally be put to rest. A thing to know about the process of becoming a variant is that these clones were human once and suffered a great deal of pain and torment and a loss of their cognitive facilities as they became the destructive war machines that we see them as now. This room, these enormous pumps, are the power filter that provides filtration for the energy source that the Rusalki need in order to work and live. By turning these on, our sleeping and, in fact, dying friend Elsinova is now able to be alive, but she's damaged and in need of repair. Behind the power filter, we find a lab coat. But the lab coat is not a regular lab coat. It is a modified lab coat. And in fact, what this lab coat is modified to do is allow us to shift around reality enough to walk through thin walls. A fun and useful ability. We transport ourselves back to this save room, to this rebirth chamber, as I fall out again. One other thing that is interesting to note about the reality warping properties of the modified lab coat is that it also provides a protective effect against physical damage. 60% of incoming damage is reduced, or is eliminated, I suppose, is a better word for it. And so, with this in tow, we are not only able to access portions of Sudra that we were not able to see before, but we are able to move much more safely. Behold, the parasitic silk bug. Anything that it detects below it, it will charge at it until it arrives roughly at its level on a silk string. When corrupted, it will fall or roll around whatever surface it might be attached to, and attempt to drop on top of its prey, falling to the ground because its silk string no longer exists. We've now emerged from Lower Kur, the underground, into Upper Kur. In Upper Kur, we find armadillos. Unfortunately, our address disruptor is not capable of corrupting these fearsome foes. We'll try to leave them be as much as possible, because, among other things, armadillos do not take any damage from our default weapons. They can only be damaged with the laser drill. And even with the damage-reducing properties of our lab coat, they're still quite powerful. And so we'll do our best to ignore them. The upper portions of Kur show us a new side of Sudra, featuring these odd, bubbly but branchy column trees, boulders, which amusingly enough can be glitched out of existence. And you can see in the background these large spore-like hanging... I don't know what I would describe them as in the distance, but these floating structures, are they other worlds? Are they fauna? Or flora of some sort? We don't know. This little mechanical wheeled bull creature is a cyber dog. Why is it called a cyber dog? I do not know. But when corrupted, it takes on the behavior of a walking bush. we're low on health. I will attempt to not stall things too much as we continue moving through our tour of Upper Kur. Cyber dogs will try their best to charge at anything that aggresses them. The boulders are boulders. They spawn and roll. And as we proceed through, we find a little friend in the world. The remote drone. A remote drone can have Trace's consciousness projected into it. And while the remote drone is moving, Trace is immobile. The remote drone is capable of using its beam to drill through and also to damage enemies, and at any point in time can be recalled to where Trace is at, causing it to explode into a flurry of nanogates and return to Trace's position. While the remote drone is out, Trace is completely invulnerable and cannot be harmed by anything. Now, the intent of sending the remote drone out was to hit that switch over there and drop the laser barriers down so that we could leave through the left-hand side of the room over there. But if you are capable of jumping on thin air, you can simply jump around and walk back out the way that you came. And in fact, this is a faster way to leave that room than it would be to send the drone all the way around. So there are some very nice conveniences to being able to warp reality. With our remote drone in tow, we actually need to return to the lower portion of Kur. In the lower portion of Kur, there sits an important item that we will need in order to see more of Sudra. And this is a theme that we'll encounter a lot, where we will need to return places for important items for a little while. We're kind of coming up toward the latter half of things that we need to move around, to the point where we can simply explore and see everything that the world has to offer. But in this little back cavern in the lower parts of Kur, we find some more ghouls. And what could Sudrans have been standing around protecting in this House of the Dead? Well, it turns out that the thing that these ghouls are here to protect is an upgrade for our address disruptor that allows us to corrupt more things and to corrupt them faster. This is address disruptor 2. This wall here, which we could not have corrupted before, can now be turned into regular drillable blocks, enabling us to leave the room and move back through the upper parts of Sudra again. With this in tow, we repair to Upper Kur, where we will find yet another item that is necessary for us to move through the world of Sudra. But not before encountering the most aware of the clone variants. I do want to note that with this upgrade in tow, we can glitch armadillos. A corrupted armadillo moves faster than its uncorrupted sibling, but is vulnerable to all manner of weaponry and not merely the laser drill. Also with this in tow, we are capable of corrupting these jumping krill, at which point they float, not harmlessly, around the room that they're in, but certainly less harmful. I do want to take a moment to note an odd property of the remote drone. Whenever the remote drone is not in the same room as Trace, the reality around where Trace is becomes distorted. And if the drone is resummoned to Trace, then the room that Trace was in and the room that the drone were in both reset to their previous states. But additionally, any hostile beings that were near Trace that would have respawned near Trace are completely despawned instead. And so, one finds a convenient way of moving safely around the world. Fun things to do when you're in possession of a glitch gun: corrupt lava, or acid, I suppose, and turn it into platforms that you can stand on. In this hallway, there is a very convenient little pick-me-up. You see, in addition to health nodes, which provide an extra 100 health when collected, there are health node fragments. A health node fragment can be reconstituted into a full health node with the addition of 4 other fragments. However, even being only a small portion of what is available, the acquisition of a health node fragment restores Trace's health to full. Now, the room immediately to the right with purple krill, and I will talk about the purple krill. These purple giant krill hop around in the air. They're unlike their red relatives. They do not spit any sort of gushers out at us. But the behavior that they have when glitched is to become completely invulnerable and also completely harmless, and they can serve as platforms. You can stand on them and push them around a little bit. Through this door, and you can see this red door indicates to us that we are in a foyer right now and about to find ourselves encountering another variant, puts us outside Girtab. What is this structure on the left side of the purple krill room? Let me go and answer that after we face the variant Girtab. So this is Girtab. Girtab is the most self-aware of the variants. And unfortunately, attempts to negotiate with us a little, is unsure whether or not we are a threat before deciding that it's unable to tell well enough and attacks us anyway. And so we have no choice but to put an end to Girtab. The structure on the left side of the purple krill room, are you referring to these growths with faces on them? Unfortunately, I don't know. They look, I mean, they're not exactly, I don't believe that they're faces. I believe that they're some sort of like rose and rose bush. You can see that the plant has leaves on it and things that look like thorns, and the head of it kind of looks like a withered rose, though it does sort of form a face shape. Unfortunately, like much in the world of Sudra, there are things that we don't know and that have been lost to time. Behind Girtab's chamber, we find Katra Haska. In the time when Athatos waged war on the Sudrans, I have no, we're not up to pole 6 yet. Mike, that will be when I acquire the trench coat. And you'll know when I get a trench coat. Katra Haska sided with Athatos and was destroyed by the other Rusalki. Katra Haska's nanogates were torn from her body and used for the Rusalki's own ends. Katra Haska is completely dead. She does not benefit at all from the power filter that we put on. And in fact, we can like, go hang out inside of her skull cavity. It's extremely morbid, but there is a whole opening torn in here. We don't know why Katrahaska decided to side with Athetos. Merely that she did, and that she was punished for doing so. Allow me to introduce you to the Grey Ghoul. Faster and stronger than its brown counterpart, but slowed down significantly when it is corrupted. They are yet more remnants of the civilization of Sudra. This switch here activates repair drones. As you can see, repair drones look very similar to our remote drone. They additionally have a drill beam, just like our remote drone has. However, they also have enhanced capabilities in that they can repair the damaged Rusalki. And so by turning their production back on, they're able to fix Elsinova and the other Rusalki who we will meet eventually. In this portion of Upper Kur, we find a somewhat unique enemy. A somewhat unique creature, the Mothmite, or Mogra, as Trace calls it. There are two kinds of Mogra, or Mothmite here. There are baby Mothmites, or small Mogra, and adult Mothmites, or large Mogra. An interesting aspect of the Mothmites is when a baby is corrupted, it takes on the characteristics of the adult. And when an adult is corrupted, it takes on the characteristics of the baby. Here in this particular chamber, we actually find another relative of the purple scissorbeaks that we saw all the way back in Erebu. This is the cyan scissorbeak. The cyan scissorbeak does exactly the same thing as its purple compatriot. The main difference between them is that the jaws of the cyan scissorbeak are stronger, and the way that it behaves when it is corrupted is different. As you can see, when a cyan scissorbeak is corrupted, it charges, leaving a trail of blocks behind it, and then explodes upon reaching its destination. Its charge can damage even things that are hostile to us. Ooh. But not necessarily destroy them completely. And these blocks can be drilled to be destroyed. An interesting thing of note is that when you destroy these drill blocks, they carve parts of the stonework away from the background. So now we can see the sky where we couldn't before. Unfortunately, Mothmites are very dangerous, and I say unfortunately because they're cute. I find them to be one of the cutest creatures on Sudra, and I would really rather not be destroying them if I could avoid doing so. But unfortunately, they're very threatening, and even with our ability to sustain greater amounts of damage, we are just not able to take very many hits from Mogra, or Mothmites, or whatever it is that you would like to call them. The reason that we are working our way through this cavern is because buried in this far off reach of Sudra, to which we will never return after we leave, is a grappling hook. Very important movement tool for a number of reasons, but also the thing that allows us, more than anything else that we see in the world of Sudra, to break the universe. On the far side of the canyon that we are approaching, you can see this whole canyon here is quite large. It is really intended for us to... it's almost as though nature was intending for us to grapple our way up the canyon, to play around. But on the far side of this, is another power node, which we will grab in order to increase our strength. And over here, we will send our remote drone over to collect the grappling hook for us. Now, if you are familiar with the video game Bionic Commando, the way in which the grappling hook attaches and swings may look familiar to you, because it bears a very strong resemblance. Now, we don't actually need anything else from this room anymore. And so we are going to go ahead and return to our rebirth chamber. Frozen, this is not the save warp that I was talking about. Just to emphasize again, we have not yet gotten to the trench coat. Taking our grappling hook to the top of Upper Kur, we are able to move on to the transportation hub, or what is effectively the transportation hub of Sudra in its current form, Indy. One second. Okay, yes. I wanted to see that thinking emote. Welcome to Indy. As you can see, Indy is not actually a place that was intended for mass transportation. It is a large cavernous space overrun with vegetation. And here we meet our next Rusalka, Oraka. Now, Oraka is incapable of speaking, and we're not totally sure that Oraka even thinks anymore. But she will gladly take us around Indy at a high speed if we stand on her head and give her head scritchies by running back and forth. Running back and forth on her head gives her pets as though she were a cat. And it is very important because Oraka is wonderful and sweet. Now, I said that the grappling hook is used to break the universe. And one of the things I want to show you about why that's the case is observe how long it takes me to pass through this doorway normally. There is a slow move into the door and a slow move out of the door. Now observe what happens if I am grappled onto the ceiling while I pass through this door. I am like a rocket. Why? Because grappling hooks break physics. Scritchy, 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 scritchy. The portion of Indy that we are in has no hostile creatures in it. You can see lots of aquatic plants, as you could see in the far right of Erebu. And in fact, on all the way to the left-hand side of Indy is an exit back to Erebu. Now, through this tunnel, there is an entryway to a portion of the world called Ukenna, which is the next place that we will be going. And normally we should enter into Ukenna from Erebu. But if we do that, we will become affected by the pathogen that has infected Sudra. We will become very sick and we will hallucinate. And that doesn't sound like a fun time. I mean, it could sound like a fun time, but I don't think it sounds like a fun time. Unfortunately, attempting to go into the back door of Ukenna so that we don't hallucinate, we're barred by this laser barrier, and we can't pass through it using our coat because, well, the laser barrier is off the ground, and we can only pass through walls if we can stand firm against them on the ground. Fortunately for us, we have a grappling hook. And so what we're going to do instead of passing through things the normal way is we're just going to jump at the ceiling and fire our grappling hook for kind of no particular reason. And it may take a little bit. But we're going to use this grappling hook to coax the universe to do what we want to do. And now we are on the opposite side of the laser barrier. We passed through. We're not supposed to be here right now. Now, confusing the universe is not a one-time thing. You see, this grappling hook is good for many things besides just passing through walls that we're not supposed to get through. It's also good for grappling onto doors. Now, if you grapple onto a door and swing through it, that's great. But if you try to ratchet yourself up, you can't pass through the door. The universe believes that you cannot pass through a door while you are grappled onto something, which, understandable. That's weird. But the universe is wrong. And so what we are going to do is, in fact, pass through a door while we are grappled onto something. And before I actually perform this, I am going to unlock the camera. And you will see that our view into the world has changed a little bit. Because if I didn't do that, you wouldn't be able to see what happens next. By confusing the world about our position, instead of the place that we just arrived in Ukana prior, we end up here, grappled onto nothingness at the top of a room that should not exist. Now, let me relock the camera and show you what... I actually, unfortunately, cannot show you what this looks like correctly anymore because I have unlocked the camera. Below us is a rebirth chamber. This door is inactive. It goes nowhere. These weeds will damage me if I walk through them, and this door appears to go somewhere, but actually if I pass through it, the universe will crash on us. It'll just stop existing. We don't want that. We don't want the universe to stop existing. So we're actually going to use our faithful grappling hook to attempt something that is a little silly. It's that. And now we are in the rebirth chamber. Now the door that leads out of the rebirth chamber takes us to the top of Ukana to a foyer. At this point, I will lock the camera again. You can see that now we return to our regularly scheduled programming. And normally, if we were to pass through here and become infected by the pathogen, our entire view would become hazy, wavy as we suffered a fever. And we're still experiencing some of the effects of this pathogen. As you can see, these blinking faces on the walls, these aren't real. And so we pass from the foyer into the room of delusion, where we find our next variant, Vision. However, that trace on the floor is not me. I am dropping bombs. I am firing bullets. I am the real monster. And upon destroying myself, a repair drone comes to bring me to another Rusalka, Ophelia. Ophelia is able to control nanogates and is able to administer medicine to Trace remotely. And in healing us, releases us back upon the world and into a version of Ukana where we are no longer affected by the pathogen at hand. Ukana is the spire of Sudra. It leads up to Sudra's highest places, and it is full of strange creatures. Strange things. These pill bugs move at half speed when they're glitched, but are otherwise unremarkable, except that they are something that can only be damaged by a drill. This is the chamber where we ostensibly fought or were fought by Vision. It is now occupied by this thing. We don't know what this is, but we do know that it likes remote drones. If you pop the remote drone up, it can get caught in this thing's mouth and be hovered up, 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 up here. This is the room that we arrived at by grappling into Ukana earlier. And at the top of it, you can see that there are green sea sponges. They are called tube poofs in Trace's Reckoning of the World. And a turbine pulse. There is no ceiling here, as before. But one thing that I will note for you is the doorway that was here before is no longer here. It's gone. And the fact that it's gone means that if we had grappled into this version of the room, we would not have been able to enter the rebirth chamber below because there wouldn't have been a ceiling for us to grapple onto here. The room that shouldn't exist is the only reason why we are able to pass through this area the way that we do. How's that? How's that for fun? This area is full of mechanical creatures and awful things. This is a Y-type sentry. Y-type sentries float around and fire energy bullets at you. And if you glitch them, they become, well, fuzzy, but otherwise nothing particularly interesting happens. These boulderbacks, when they hop when something approaches them, damaging it, but when glitched, they can destroy blocks that we otherwise would not be able to destroy. Now, they can actually be glitched through the blocks that they live in. And this would enable us to enter this passage over here. Oh yes, that was a missing no. Thank you. Thank you for pointing it out. I just picked up a power node fragment, which can be reassembled into a full power node when you have 6 of them. Now, the thing that we're actually here for is a trench coat. And the trench coat is in the room to our left. And normally we would have to go down and around because, again, we can't use our lab coat to pass through walls if those walls are not on the ground. But we have a grappling hook. So we're just going to, yeah. The trench coat. Another modified coat, the trench coat allows us to dash. Dashing can be executed in midair. And it allows us to pass through walls that are 2 tiles thick. This allows us to move to places that we could not go before by quite a lot. Now, an interesting property of the trench coat is, despite the fact that it dashes through 2 tiles, if I stand on, it is quite a dashing trench coat, yes. If I stand on something 2 tiles thick and try to dash downward, which we can dash downward, you know, we can dash upward, we can dash downward, I won't be able to pass through this. Similarly, if I were to be in a 2 tile thick tunnel, I wouldn't be able to pass through. But if I grapple onto a ceiling and wait until I'm laid out horizontal, it's no problem to dash upward through 2 tile thick walls. And now we will save warp. Next pull, please. The important part, well, not the only important part, but an important function of the trench coat is to further reduce the damage that we take. It additionally, wait, what is that redemption? What is Goni Odsi? Oh, nice. Is to gain access to this area, which is known as Eden. Ah, good, nice. Not much is known about the purpose of Eden as a whole. It contains a hangar in which are the bodies of the Rusalki. But there is also a high tower, which appears to be of some religious significance. It bears sun symbols of a sort. Buried underneath the ground here, there are also more gray ghouls, and they are terrifying, so we are going to leave them around. All right. Chat has voted hug. Allow me to introduce you to... Well, first I'll introduce you to fireflies. These little buggies on the side dive attack at anything that gets near them. Trace's nickname for these is the Eye Copter. So that's weird. They do look like little copters. But after that, I will introduce you to these blade vines. This little helicopter-looking thing here, with a tail sticking out of it, is also known as a blade buddy by me. And I call them blade buddies because they just want to be friends. See? They're chasing after me, but not because they want to hurt me. They just want to be friends. They're real excited to see me. They'll follow me like a puppy dog wherever I go. And so we're just going to give our blade buddies a hug. Okay, that was enough hugging. It turns out that when something is a buddy and its name is Blade, hugging it hurts. You'll note that there's a big pocket of breach right here. And as I mentioned before, if I touch the breach, it hurts. But also, this pocket of breach is especially thin, so as long as we're invulnerable for a little bit, we're capable of passing through it using our trench coat because it's thin enough. It's just, it's gosh darn thin enough. Now, nominally, one is not supposed to pass through that pocket of breach without being able to dispel it. But we are extremely good pattern minds. And so we are just basically able to manipulate the universe to our preference. In an older version of the tour, we would climb all the way up this tower. We would explore the entirety of the top of the tower, get an item that we need, come down the tower so that we are able to... Here, let me show you. We're not currently able to access this health node here. And so we would obtain the next item that we need in order to be able to get that health node and a couple of other items. And then we would come all the way back down to collect the things that we weren't able to get before. And then we would turn around and go all the way back up to set up for dying intentionally. That's right, dying intentionally. Now, that's kind of a gruesome way to participate in a tour. You know, forcing people to watch someone die intentionally. It's not what you would call family-friendly entertainment. So we don't do that anymore. We found a different and better way to move around the world. Let's go ahead, and we don't have technically the item that we're supposed to have to pick up this note in here either. And so we're gonna move around the world a little bit in ways that we're not strictly speaking expected to. And you can see, so I'm actually going to show you this in a little while, which is going to require me to move around a little bit. Yes. What I will do here is use the rebirth chamber. I'm going to go ahead and save my game here. Oh, whoops. I forgot that I did not have the item that I wanted. So just give me one moment. As you can tell, we are outside of another foyer, where we will find yet another variant. But before we do that, I want to show you a couple of things that are very interesting, in my opinion. One is we actually don't need to fight. We wouldn't technically need to fight this variant at all if it weren't for the fact that this is a tour and we want to see everything that the world has to offer. But an odd property of the trench coat that we have is that if we just kneel down here and then dash into the ceiling, we end up embedded over here. And the universe, if it's feeling slow enough at any given point in time, will let us just kind of continue to walk forward once we're embedded in the wall. Which allows us to then proceed through the other side and acquire this, the drone teleport. Which allows us to switch places with our drone and enables access to many parts of Sudra that we would not otherwise have access to. I'm going to enter from the wrong direction because I don't know what this will do, and I think it will be fun to show you. This is Ukhu, a gigantic wasp that fires smaller wasps. Those wasps, when glitched, will explode, much like the green gliders that we saw in Absu. And Ukhu takes tremendous amounts of damage from those explosions. Ukhu, as a gigantic wasp... I can't believe that I quick killed Ukhu from the left side on my first try. That was ridiculous. That actually might be faster than the quick kill from the right side. Probably not, actually. I don't think that it is. Never mind. Ukhu is also the only variant that we've met so far that doesn't talk at all. It doesn't have anything to say about killing demons. It just attacks. It is too far mutated from its human form. The other thing that I want to try and show you, if I can, is when you are the master of going places you shouldn't go, you can get yourself stuck places that you shouldn't be able to go. Like here. It is not really possible for us to leave this place. We can use the drone teleport to get as far up as we might want to. We might even potentially be able to grapple on, but this floor is 4 tiles wide, and so we'll never be able to pass through it. And so we will have to resend ourselves back to the rebirth chamber. If it were possible to get more than 100% map in this game, that is the way that you would do it. Actually, if I check the time, I need to take a brief intermission. I require 5 minutes to grab myself some food. Please fill out the appropriate poll. I will return shortly. Where is it? There it is. Mhm. Hello? Hello, hello, hello. I'm assuming, I just want to double check that I can, okay, I should be able to be heard again. Great. Let us resume the tour. I hope you all had a nice little break. Now, in the olden days, in the old version of the tour, when we took an intentional death, we would stick our drone right here, and we wouldn't save at that rebirth chamber. We would not use that rebirth chamber in the upper left-hand corner. But that's not what we do anymore. That's not how we run our tours, no intentional deaths. We only have peaceful returns to rebirth chambers. And so we're going to take advantage of our new ability to pop our drone through these tunnels and collect this health node as we grow stronger and stronger and stronger in the increasingly hostile world of Sudra. There is additionally this little passageway up here, which contains a power node fragment. Why this place? Why does this room exist? Who was swapping places with drones such that there is a drone tunnel here and a thing you can only pass through with certain kinds of conditions? How powerful were the pattern mines of old? We just don't know. What we do know is that Sudra is a magical place in many ways. And that one of the best ways to move around hostile magical places is just to make it so that your foes, your dangers, do not exist. And so we clip ourselves into the room below in a state where the universe does not know that we should be here. And so we can occupy this room on a different plane of existence from our enemies, from our dangerous flora and fauna, if you will. And we can move around the world quite freely here. Normally, if we were to load into the correct plane of existence, there would actually be a big breach pocket over here. That's not there. I do want to actually show around a little bit. Right, as you can see, there is this stone wall here, and the breach here, we're simply on a different plane from where the breach would be. And what we want to do here, actually, is to position our drone there and just leave it there. And now we are going to just kind of proceed along our merry way. We're going to exit out this way into the rest of Eden again. And go do more strange things with our grappling hook. Now, physics is weird, especially when you have a grappling hook and especially when you can teleport just random places. But an odd property of doors in Sudra is if you're grappled right above them, like this, and you dash downward into them, like this, instead of popping out in the place that you were supposed to pop out, that would be the downward side of the door actually kicks you back out upward. And because this world is divided into discrete segments, of which only one can be present at any given point in time, instead of kicking us back up out into Indy, it instead sticks us into the cold, unfeeling void back in Z. So now, if I show you where we are in the world, there's nothing. We're just surrounded by nothingness. And funny thing about the world is that it does not want us to be in nothingness. So if we fire our drone out, the little drone egg will just fall forever. But if we pop it, the universe will really want to put that drone somewhere where it sort of belongs. And so it finds some logical correspondence between the drone's last position that was sensible in the universe and the part of the universe that we're in now. And when we move the drone a little bit to the left, it emerges from this door into a room that has for us this beautiful item. This is the passcode tool. Among other things, we've been picking up these notes. And so three of the notes that we have here, of the three notes that we have here, this one is written in Vihya, which looks a little bit like Earth's Cyrillic and is the language of the Rusalki. These two are written in Sudran. But we can't read Vihya and we can't read Sudran. But our passcode tool actually serves as a really handy translation device if we input the appropriate passcode. Reveal Sudran. Reveal Vihya. And finally, Justin Bailey. Justin Bailey does not translate. Justin Bailey changes us into a more fashionable outfit. If you are the sort of person who likes science thighs, I hope that you appreciate this extremely chic short coat and Speedo. Now, as I mentioned, our notes are now translated for us. This is a note detailing the betrayal of the Rusalki by Katrahaska. Athetos retreated after his war to the Breach Attractor, which is where he remains to this day. This is a note by the Sudrans, referring to the Rusalki. The Sudran word for Rusalka is kuliltu. The note speaks in metaphors. It speaks about battling in the sea above and the high priestess ringing in the storm and leaving them to spill upon the plains. I believe that this refers to the Rusalki not being from Sudra, but rather from another world where they fought wars. And by using the Breach Attractor to open a route to Sudra, they came from the sea above, the breach, into Sudra, the plains, and became trapped in Sudra as their guardians. But unlike the populace of Sudra, they are machines, and they do not age, and they do not die. This note, titled Oraka, is a note from the Rusalka Veruska to the Sudrans, asking them to move Oraka to a larger space. It's possible that this is why Oraka lives in Indi, where she has free roam along a long corridor back and forth. This note actually just contains the passcode that allows us to translate the Sudran language. But one thing that I do want to note is that it makes reference to the modern Sudran script, not the programming language. The Sudran bears resemblance to Sumerian, a language which in more than one folk construct is referred to as a sort of primordial code for the universe. Whether or not you believe that is certainly up to you. But the place that we have righted ourselves in the universe is in the room of the Rusalka Veruska, the dreamer. Veruska dreams dreams for other Rusalki and for other beings. She's capable of invading and altering the dreams of others. She'll remain silent here. She has nothing to say to us now, but she's very much alive. And you can see that her form is quite different from that of Elsinova and Katrahaska, having much more tentacle-like or snake-like tubing attached to her. But like the other Rusalki, aside from Katrahaska, she has been repaired by the repair drones. We emerge once again in Z. And in Z, we are going to position ourselves for yet another glitching of the universe. This rebirth chamber right here has an odd correspondence with a spot in Kerr. And so as we make our way up back to the entrance to Kerr, we find ourselves here and at yet another odd place in the world. Look for a moment. Trace stands upon the ground, his feet firmly planted, and then we dive into the acid. If you look closely, you can see that his feet are in the same position that they occupy when he is falling. Legs slightly spread, one straight down. And if we aim down in here and place our drone, underneath that acid is the void, the nothingness that the universe does not want us to occupy. And so our drone appears once again in another vastly different part of the world. I will open the map only to note that the place that we were in just a moment ago is that square in the lower left-hand corner of the map with the farthest down left arrow next to it. And the place that we are at right now is the pink square that is occupied by the little flashing portion. We have moved almost the entire way across Kerr in a moment. And here we have collected another subprogram for the Axiom Disruptor, the Reflector. Like most subprograms for the Axiom Disruptor, it is less useful than the ones that we already have, so we won't be using it. Sudra is full of strange little pockets where people hid things. It's unclear why they would hide them in a wall like this, but, you know, people do strange things. And certainly there was a significant portion of time where Sudra was undergoing biological warfare, so who can blame them for doing things that are a little bit strange? The place that we emerge is in the snowy upper reaches of Kerr, very close to the high temple at Kerr's summit. Here we find a note from the Sudrans, notifying the people of Sudra that the High Priestess and one of her advisors have died of the plague, as have many more of the priesthood and nobility. Sudra has fallen. Look for us in prisons below Council Rock. The prisons below Council Rock are the catacombs that we saw much earlier in Absu, where the Kuliltu are awakening the old machines. May the gods guide us until distant days. in these snowy upper reaches of Kerr, we do want to find our way to the temple so that we can find some more of what old Sudra had to offer that could help us navigate through this hostile world. But to reach it, we first want a little help. Not strictly necessary, but extremely useful, is the enhanced drone launcher. And contrary to the anemic distance that the drone was launched before, the enhanced drone launcher fires the drone much farther and much faster, which enables us to do quite a lot more traveling and cover quite a lot more ground than we could before. Let's see. Where are we? Oh, yes. Frozen, did we run poll number 8? Did we have an outcome on that? Okay. That's all right. I just wanted to make sure. Folks, please pay attention to your chat. Another poll is beginning shortly. And please vote while I traverse the upper reaches of Kerr. Now, one thing that I want to point out here is that in addition to being faster than the launch that we had before, the drone's launch inherits momentum from the dash. And so we are able to cover quite a lot of ground. It appears that the poll results... the poll is still running. I'm going to stay here for a minute and talk a little bit about the entrance to the temple, Ekurma. Ekurma means the house on the mountain. And it is populated by old guardians, ancient sentries of Sudra. As you can see, these old guardians are extremely powerful. And they do quite a lot of damage. Before I venture anywhere, I'm going to make use of the rebirth chamber yet again. It's important, you know, not to take your health too far into your hands when you are giving a tour. It's not... you don't want to create too risky of a scenario, of course. It would be bad if the people you were guiding were left alone in a alien and dangerous world. It appears that Backward has won the poll. And let me explain to you now. In order to gain access to the inner reaches of the temple, under normal circumstances, a person would need to obtain the Sudran key, a relic that unlocks doors. But if you are a pattern mind and you know how the universe works, and you have a grappling hook, then you can instead do something that looks a little bit like this. I will need to pay attention to the audio for one moment. Well, I don't, strictly speaking, need to pay attention to the audio. I can just show you what happened. So, I got dragged to roughly here, at which point I broke out of my grapple and fell down to here. And now, because we have entered into the depths of the temple on a different plane of existence, we are free to navigate the inner reaches of the temple without so much as a peep from any of its normal guardians. Until we reach this door, at which point everything will catch up with us. These golden hoppers, hookfish by Trace's reckoning, are ancient and powerful versions of the prongfish or tunnel hoppers that we saw much earlier. They guard an impressively powerful relic, which is at the end of this room, protected by extremely dense rock that is extremely hard to tunnel through. Behold, the red coat. For just one moment, I am going to disable the fashion passcode and put on the red coat. So I want you to see what a subtle change this is. But I don't want to deny you fashion for too long. So let's return to the outfit as it was meant to be. In addition to taking us farther and faster, the dash trail left by this modified coat busts through everything it touches. With this in tow, we are capable of moving fast through anywhere that we want to go. We are also much, much safer because that dash trail also provides us with a brief period of invulnerability. As we emerge here, we enter into the deep chamber that we walked through free of enemies before. This chamber is known as Green Hell. It's known as Green Hell largely because of these, it is very green, but it is also full of these just like bush-like enemies. Now, one thing that is interesting is that if you glitch this, come back here. It's hard to see until they start jumping over me, but there are letters flashing on this thing. And if you put them all together, they form a passcode. Iskart Ehanzu. And entering these words into our passcode tool opens up a tunnel here that was not there before. And by warping reality, we gain access to the Quantum Variegator, another sub-program for our Axiom Disruptor, which is not very good. So these parasitic shrubs, of course, are one sort of thing, but what would something similar to Metroid be without something similar to a Metroid? These bright green bushes will latch on to you and suck your life force dry. Now with the added protection of the red coat, we're much less likely to suffer a fatal wound from that. And we are able to proceed up and backwards. Ooh. Why? There we go. Through the temple. Not in the direction that we were intended to. Now we want to anchor ourselves to this rebirth chamber because there is actually an exit from the temple in that chamber. And it will be useful to come back to it later. As we see, the deep parts of the temple are mostly populated by these ancient sentries that are here to guard all of the treasures. And tucked here in a little alcove that we otherwise would not be able to access is another note, an official letter. An official letter from the high priests, from the nobility, to the high priestess, asking the high priestess to give the Rusalki whatever they want, because they are unlikely to survive the conflict with Athetos regardless. We don't know exactly what it was that the Rusalki were asking for, but the fellow who was there wanted to give it to them. There's nothing particularly interesting in that rebirth chamber, ignore me. With the red coat in tow, we are able to now explore the entirety of the temple without requiring the key. But, you know, I'm not showing you everything if I don't show you everything. So this golden block that is in front of me, there is an emblem in the center of it, a broken open circle with up and down triangles in it. That is the emblem of the Sudran key. And so since we didn't really explore the lobby here before, let's go ahead and do that. There is also yet another note buried in there, an anonymous quote that discusses the legacy of Sudra, the war from the before times that brought Sudra to its knees, the last crop turned to dust, the last brick of the last home shattered, and the last warrior and the last demon lie dying, that people understood their sins. And so the arms of the apocalypse were sealed, the masters of patterns, the pattern minds, castrated, and the old machines returned to slumber. The legacy of Sudra is atonement. Their descent into religion that forgot what their technology was for was the result of seeing the horrors that it had wrought, that power had brought to them. We'll descend deeper into the temple. A lonely place occupied only by machines guarding relics of a people who are no longer here. And in this case, the relic they're guarding serves no purpose whatsoever, because this key has already been obviated by the fact that we simply warped reality around ourselves. Tucked in here we find yet another note. There are a lot of notes in the temple, as you might expect from a place for storing knowledge. This is from an observer discussing a notion called the land of civilized kings, spoken of with reverence in poem and song alike. And the note author believes that this is not some heaven or some mythic realm of pride, but actually Sudra in its glory days. In that little alcove, we found the Sudran key. I will show it to you in the inventory. You will see that it looks very much like the emblem that was on the doors. It is this, the Sudran key. So now the temple lays unlocked to us for all that we would need it for anyway. We're done here. The temple serves no purpose. We will exit out the last room that we have not explored in the temple, and we will never return. The last holiest place of the Sudran people in their final days is now empty for the rest of time, more or less. Emerging from the temple, we find ourselves back near where we found our grappling hook. Now, there's still actually quite a lot of Kur that we haven't covered, but I did also say that I was going to take you on a tour of the entirety of Sudra, and there are a couple of spaces inside of Girtab's chamber that we just didn't see. And now, in this wide open view, hopefully it's clear that you've seen everything that that chamber has to offer. Kur is an interesting place in that it's structured very strangely. It's not extremely easy to move around Kur efficiently. So we are going to just take a little bit of a detour here to... Oh, there we go. Anchor ourselves to a different little rebirth chamber so that we can move around faster than we otherwise would be able to. Now, an interesting thing about Sudra is that no matter where you go, there is bound to be something tucked away in a place that makes no sense. And so buried in the middle of this rock wall, for reasons that I could not possibly tell you, is yet another sub-program for the Axiom Disruptor. This is the Ion Pulse. Ion Beam? It fires a laser. It's not very powerful. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's interesting how many sub-programs were constructed for this thing, considering that they're mostly not very useful. I feel sort of bad for whoever developed them. To have your work be mostly useless just seems kind of awful, you know? And so here in the upper reaches of Snowy Kur, we find ourselves another power node fragment and one more note. This note talks about Uruku and about the existence of the mind across multiple planes of existence, and what happens to a particular mind, a particular version of a mind when it dies in one plane of existence. Mostly it is a horrifying diatribe on the eternal torment of Uruku and the unusual bond that Athetos shares with his variants and clones. And I will not suffer you through reading it because it is awful. K and G sound very Kurugu? Oh, not Kuruku. Uruku. But yes, K and G can sound very similar sometimes because they are voiced and unvoiced variants of the same sound. Upper Kur holds nothing left for us to explore. We've seen all of it. We return now to Eden. This is a dead silkworm. What is the word? Chrysalis. Cocoon. In other parts of Eden, we will actually see one of these that is alive. It is quite an interesting creature, but these ones are dead. Here we see pockets of breach. Again, Eden is probably the most polluted in terms of the presence of breach just in the world. And also, if you look into the background sky, you can see more of these bizarre spore structures that you can see in the background of Kur. There is one interesting little piece of fauna here, and it's these little platform bugs. They're quite fun. Off in this little storage cavern off to the side, aside from many, not exactly dead, but certainly buried former Sudran people, there is another health node and another power node just tucked away in a storage that you would not be able to get to if you could not pass through walls. And so again, I wonder how long ago those must have been hidden. I want to take a moment here to show you something, which is that there is a breach pocket here that it is not passable. And I want to show you that even if you are the sort of person who does not have appropriate tools for clearing breach, there are a couple of ways to navigate around this. One of them is the same thing that allowed us to enter temple backwards. So if we come here and it will take a little bit to make this work, I think. But if I come back here and I door grapple, assuming I can do it correctly. There we go. I have now been pulled back. If you look at the mini map, you can see I've been pulled back to the right side of the door. And I do want to go ahead and show you. The one thing I want to note is look at the background. We don't have that beautiful purple sky anymore. We have this dark, awful, weirdly parallaxing background. Because we are on a wrong plane of existence. There is a bunch of breach that was here that is simply not here anymore. Right there. And you can see that although the breach isn't visible here, we still actually can't pass through this. Unfortunately, this does not actually serve our purpose in terms of passing through. But because some breach does get eliminated, it was a reasonable attempt. It was a reasonable attempt. Let us return, though, to the place that we were before. And in doing so, let us pass through the floor again, as we've done before. Now, once everything has caught up with us, this is where we emerged. This place right here was where we fell through. And this is the silo. In the background, look at this large snake-like body. This is Elsinova's war body. Look here at this enormous scorpion. This is Ophelia's war body. And here, a place you can scarcely see, this squid-like construct, I believe to be Veruska's war body. Now, the thing that I fired that cleared the breach away here is an address bomb. It is the most powerful form of corruption available in the world of Sudra. Everything which can be corrupted at all can be corrupted by an address bomb. Eden, among other things, served as a research laboratory for Athetos in his earlier days. And in this room, we find 2 rebirth chambers being used to breed new clones and variants. This is the aborted clone, a variant of Athetos that was never completed and never will be. these small green crawlers along the ground, among other things, are unaffected by anything. They cannot be glitched, they cannot be shot, but they are babies of a much larger creature. These giant green worms crawl along any surface that they find, and when glitched, like several other enemies that we've seen before, they gain the ability to bust through walls, even walls that we might not be able to break through ourselves. This room, oddly, is the scariest room in all of Eden. The reason for this is that the confluence of creatures in this room can, with the dashing and the teleporting of drones, can cause the universe to become confused in a way that causes it to blip out of existence. Yes, this room can crash the game. These bats that are chasing me around are, when corrupted, they take on the behavior of the fireflies from elsewhere in Eden, and otherwise will hover around just kind of doing their thing. As I mentioned before, these green casings are the carnivorous silkworm chrysalises. And when you get close to them, they will open up and expand their tentacles, adding giant green worms to things you don't want busting through your walls. I think that that is fair. If you corrupt these, they take on the same movement as the carnivorous silk bugs that live in Kerr. I believe that there is only one variety of thing we have not covered in Eden. One creature that exists in here that I have not spoken about. And I will try to find an appropriate place to talk about them. I'm not 100% sure where else I might find them at this particular point. I want you to recall earlier that I said that if the drone is recalled from a different room that Trace is in, that it resets the state of the room that the drone is in and the room that Trace is in. If Trace was left in a space that had been occupied by destructible blocks, those blocks want to respawn, and Trace is then stuck in a wall. And the universe doesn't like it when people are stuck in walls. And so the way that it corrects this is it just shoves Trace straight up until it finds a place that he's not in a wall anymore. And so we use this to move quickly up to the door, back out to the main area of Eden. Now that I have that we've obtained the address bomb, something weird about the universe changes. Previously, if you were to corrupt a blade buddy, let's have a hug, now that I can become invulnerable, you would get health out of its tail vine. But now, one obtains only address bombs, which one can use to clear pockets of breach, which one can use to find hidden items that were stuck inside of breach. Why are people hiding items inside of breach? I don't know. There are some things that I just don't know. I'm going to ascend up into Eden Tower because this, I think, is the last place that I will find the creatures that I forgot to talk about. And these are will-o-wisps. These creatures will latch onto you and drain your life force and grow engorged, and when they get large enough, they will split off into multiple smaller will-o-wisps again that will then repeat the cycle. Oh, yes. When corrupted, they become like the purple wasps from the hive, they take on a completely different hitbox, and they start spitting stingers at you, which is very strange. Like, I wouldn't think of those as having anything to do with one another. I would not have thought them related at all. Now, the left side of Sudra, or not the left side of Sudra, the left side of Eden is a place that we haven't been before. And the reason that we haven't been to the left side of Eden before is because it's much easier to visit now. And with our ability to dash and dash through walls, we are able to acquire a syringe, which we promptly get injected with remotely by Ophelia. Or actually, I think Elsinova does it for us. Now, whenever we're at full health, tentacles will emerge from our back and start firing bullets. What do you know? A health node fragment to put us back to full health. Look at these down tentacles. Look at these tentacles. And if I fire my gun, they will fire little bullets below them as well. They just want to help. At this point, we have seen everything that there is to see in Eden. We will now never return to Eden. We return to Ukanam mostly because it is something that we more or less have to do. And we will go ahead and just anchor ourselves here. Now, later, we will use this as a passageway to a couple of different areas. But for right now, since we didn't see any of this area before, when we would have been hallucinating, we should take a little bit of a tour through Ukan and show you everything that there is to offer. Ukan is a really interesting space. It's a little bit technological. There's lots of pipes running everywhere, but it's also extremely rocky terrain. It also features these strange little things, which when they burst open, normally spawn swarms of flies at you. But when corrupted, the very first one that you corrupt gives you a health node fragment, and every subsequent one thereafter will just explode into health. This is what happens if you let them explode without corrupting them. The swarms that they produce will become harmless bubbles if you corrupt them. And here in this recess, in a dead end in an access tunnel in Ukan, we find another note. There are a couple of notes that we haven't looked at yet, actually. They're not consenticles, no. They fire bullets at things whether they want them to or not. And in fact, they are given to you without your consent. So they're not consenticles on a number of levels. So this is a long form note of a way of basically saying everything in the universe is code, and everything perceiving that code is subcode of that code that will be perceived as reality. And this is sort of a long way of saying that being a pattern mind is kind of like being the one in the Matrix. That's how I'm going to explain that. The breach. Our best conjecture thus far is that it is a forced relinking of the lattices underlying adjacent universes. The breach attractor has some capacity to shift the points at which the lattices link. The region beyond the breach remains intact, as when the breach recedes, the atmosphere and surrounding ocean don't encounter a vacuum in its absence, though there is a strong disturbance in the currents once the two sides meet again. Outside of a breach elevator, passing through the breach can be fatal. The Sudrans used this as a makeshift shield to keep out intruders, or as in our case, to keep something else trapped in. Based on their writings, it seems like the Sudrans have long ago lost a scientific understanding of what the breach truly is, perceiving it as an intense meteorological phenomenon rather than a divider between worlds. A7 hypothesized that the breach itself is invisible and that the effect we see in the sky is in fact a protective field of microscopic elements covering the frayed ends. That's a lot of words for breach dangerous, don't totally know what it is, separates universes. Now, as we kind of make our way up through the space in Ukana, it is a good time to talk about the fact that Ukana leads to the highest point on Sudra, the fortress of Athatos, Mar Uru. We'll be visiting there later, and paying our friend a visit. I say friend very sarcastically. In the meantime, we haven't actually seen that much of Indy. In fact, we've seen less than half of it. Now, one thing that's interesting about Indy is that although you can see all of it from Uraka's head, you can't really experience Indy without appropriately traversing through its floor. We'll get to that in relatively short order. But first, we're going to pick up, I believe, one more note. I've hidden some of our more sensitive items in the breach pockets appearing here and there. The Rusalki won't go in, it interferes with their electronics. There are places in the world, we won't see any of them because none of them have manifested this particular run through, that are somewhat randomly assembled, glitchy, scanline bearing spaces called breach pockets. They have items that don't really exist in them, and one of them bears one of 3 weapons that also don't really exist, and we will not be seeing any of those because they don't really exist this particular tour through. Now, as I mentioned, there are some hostile things on the floor of Eden, or not Eden, Indy. We passed by some of them, but they're all things that appear elsewhere. And so I'm not going to stop and talk about creatures that we've already experienced, which, you know, that reminds me, while we are here... Oh my gosh. What just happened? Things appear to have locked up. One moment while I fix the situation. We are encountering minor technical difficulties. We'll be back up and running shortly. Unfortunately, that means that some of the progress that we have garnered will be gone, and we will need to do a little bit of revisiting of things. In order for everything to be as it should. One moment while I... All right. Well, you know what happens. You know how it goes. When you play with the universe too much, it breaks. That's just the way it goes. It looks like we didn't actually lose too much in the way of progress. Let's see. I think... okay, yes, we will need to redo our visit to Indy. So, as we did before, we're going to ride on top of Araka and give her head scritchy, 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 scritchy. We'll come back here. We'll get the note about breach pockets. We're not going to read the notes about breach pockets. We will traverse Indy again. Now, Araka is fast, but it is technically the case that if we flawlessly chain together our dashes and our drone launches, that we are a little bit faster than Araka is. But that depends on us not running into walls. It depends on us being perfect. And pattern mines are powerful, but they're not necessarily perfect. So, the important thing, however, is that Araka cannot actually skim the floor, whereas we can go along the floor as much as we like. So we're going to go ahead and zip ourselves all the way back. And scuttle our way back into Kerr, because it turns out there's something we forgot here. Kerr is not complete. We haven't done everything that there is to do in the House of the Dead. For one thing, there's another sub-program for the Axiom Disruptor hidden here, the Firewall. As you can see, it's terrible. We won't be using it. And there are a few breakable walls back here that we'll just be busting through. And using as a way to get to a back area here where we will find yet another sub-program for the Axiom Disruptor that we won't use. So in here, buried in this deep reach of Kerr, is, gosh, tethered charge. It's like a yo-yo. It's like a yo-yo. It's a yo-yo. It's a little cool. We're gonna use this for a while. And now we've linked back up with where we want to be. We've now explored everything that there is in Kerr, found everything that exists to find in Kerr, or so I believe. Let's verify. No, I missed something. I forgot something very important. And by very important, I mean I forgot something that's like a little important. It's a little important if I want to show you everything, and I told you I want to show you everything. Let's just check where we are in terms of, okay, we've still got plenty of time for me to show you what it is that I want to show you, which is everything. Well, we're just going to do this because we're faster than Elsinova, or not Elsinova. We're faster than Araka is. As much as I would like to give her head scritchies. It's so much fun. I soar through the air with the greatest of ease. The dashing young pattern mind. Blowing up trees. I'm not really blowing up trees, but it's fun to say. So a long time ago, we went and met the variant Gear Tab. And Gear Tab... Am I remembering this correctly? Am I remembering where... Yes, I'm remembering where I missed things correctly. Before we went to go see Gear Tab, we should have taken a little bit of a detour over here to visit this side cave. Because in this side cave is the hypoatomizer. Now, like all subprograms for the Axiom Disruptor, the hypoatomizer is mostly useless, with one exception. If you are not the sort of person who knows how to defeat the Gertab variant quickly, kneeling underneath it and firing this at its belly is probably the best way to destroy it. And we've lived through this simulation plenty of times, so we know a thing or two about what is actually effective. So at this point, I should have actually explored everything that there is to offer in Kerr. That is correct. So now we can continue. Now, gosh. There are so many places that we haven't been for so long. It's been 2.5 hours at this point. Roughly. Since we began our journey through Sudra. And, you know, just all the way back here is Erebu. Now, if you remember these glitch walls from very, very early on in our journey, we can zap these now. It's really pretty nice. Additionally, there's this whole big breach pocket here, which, yeah, we can just get rid of. And amusingly, because breach is supposed to be impassable, we can use this in much the same way as we used the rock back in Eden to teleport Trace upward faster than he would normally climb. So it's been a while since we've seen our friends, the purple Scissorbeaks. I do want to give you a chance to see what happens when they're corrupted. They replace themselves with red bubble block. So the lightning gun that I'm using right now, which is the most recent sub-program for the Axiom Disruptor that I picked up, it auto-locks onto enemies. You won't get to see it for too long because everything here will die very quickly. But it, without me even aiming it, if it's like kind of in the vicinity of an enemy, it'll lock on. And all the way here at the very beginning of the game, at the very beginning of the world, the very beginning of our journey, we're going to use the very first rebirth chamber that we ever used and perform nonsense. You see, hidden here in the back of this wall is an important set of relics. First and foremost, on the left side here, and Frozen, please, just so you know, we're coming up on the trigger point for the next poll. Actually, you should go ahead and run it now so that it has enough time to complete. It's a little early, but yes, 1 second. So I'm going to show you something that you're not supposed to see. I'm going to show you 2 things that you're not supposed to see. The first thing that you're not supposed to see is simply guarded by a passcode. And that is the greatest of primordial fires. The flamethrower. The second thing that I'm going to show you that you are not supposed to see I did that wrong, actually. Let's see. Okay, I was supposed to be here. Let's try that again. Something primordial fires. That's exactly right. Now, one moment. Because in order for you to be able to see this... I mean, you'll see that I'm not anywhere here anymore. And if I go ahead and expose my position to you, high atop Ereboo, there are gigantic structures with numbers in them. What do these mean? Why did the Sudrans build this so far outside the bounds of their reality? Look how far away from anything resembling the world we are right now. How far do they go? Well, they go quite far. All the way to the left and right boundaries of Ereboo itself. And a little bit beyond. This inactive door does nothing. And if we progress far enough over here, there's water, but no water. How strange. And a rebirth chamber that is empty. Now, I mean, far be it from me to suggest that one might want to proceed downward past this, which we certainly can't do by dashing, but we have a grappling hook, so let's make use of it. And there's a number 1 here, and if we dash down, there's a number 2, and a number 3, and a 4, and a 5, and a 6, and a 7, and an 8, and a 9, and a 10, and an 11, and a 12, and a 13, and a 14, and a 15, and a 16, and a 17, and an 18, and that's as far as we can go. Any farther than that, and we are just out of bounds. Now, I want to make it clear, if I pop my drone open here, I don't get out of bounds teleported. We are not out of bounds. We are in the universe's conception of Ereboo. But we are so far outside where Ereboo is. That we have no way of getting back but to save warp. Let's explore the rest of Ereboo proper. In this little alcove up here lies an interesting historical artifact. Beyond these rocks and the red bubble block, which of course is all very par for the course in Ereboo. Oh, the poll is ending. All right. Lies a wheelchair, a broken, rusty wheelchair, and a faded note. The faded note is a wondrous accounting of Arrival on Sudra, written by Trace. You see, our nemesis, our antagonist Athetos, who committed genocide on the people of Sudra, is Trace. And Trace is a clone of the original Trace who became Athetos. These butterflies, called Swarmalies by Trace, are the only familial creatures that we see on Sudra. They have a parent and many children, and they swarm together, diving and attacking and shooting, spitting? Who knows? If you remember, a long time ago, we came here to get Nova, and a long time ago we saw green cephalopods in Sudra, and in fact we will see some more green cephalopods here as we ascend to a high point where we will get a health node. There's nothing else at this apex, unfortunately, aside from a few creatures who... It's unclear why they exist at this point in Ereboo, because there are no other members of their species anywhere in this area, and no passageways in and out for them to get to that particular point. We spend some amount of time as we research the history of Sudra just wondering about how things came to be the way that they are. The multi-disruptor. Incredibly useless. We won't see it again. In this particular little dead-end corner of Sudra, we find one more green cephalopod, and this set of barriers that we're not able to pass. But, you know, a fun thing about knowing things about the world is... well, you get to find out all sorts of interesting secrets. You see, when you run your glitch gun, there is a little bit of corrupted data that appears in the upper right-hand corner underneath the HUD. And if you glitch this particular spot, you can see the text, Ikibu Labiru. And if we replace a passcode we no longer need with Ikibu Labiru, a door appears that was not there before. And now it's Thriller night, and no one likes these zombies. I don't know why they are all here. In this back corner of Ereboo, hidden behind passcodes and secrets, lie creatures more powerful by leagues than anything else in the entirety of Ereboo. How did they get there? Why are they there? We circle back around and find a switch that disables the laser barriers, and a lone power node fragment. For better or worse, we are now done with the upper portion of Ereboo. There remains only one unexplored portion of the entrance to the world of Sudra, and I will take you there now. You see, a long time ago, when we were coming down this shaft to enter Absu, way in the first few minutes of our journey, we ignored this little side area. It wouldn't have been possible for us to climb it because we didn't have any way to jump up as high as we needed to reach these platforms. But now we can come here and find this Sudran written on the wall up here. And yes, it's fine for the timer to be counting up. The Sudran written on the wall is just the right length for a passcode. And if you were to translate it by hand, and I'm not going to, because I've done it before, you would see that it produces the text Dalku Subdum. Inputting this into our passcode tool reveals yet another door that takes us into the last hidden room in Erebu. This room, which has remained sealed for hours while we explored the rest of Sudra, contains yet another useless subprogram for the Axiom disruptor. It crawls along walls. It's not terrible, but we're not going to use it because the greatest of primordial fires is here. Thank you so much for the raid of 66 free enterprise. Welcome. You are coming in toward the end of a guided tour of Sudra, the world of Axiom Verge. I do need to check something really quickly. Okay, we have slightly more than an hour left in the tour. Hello, Scala. Scala kitty. Oh, I just realized that there is a little unexplored piece of Erebu up there. I forgot because I'm a doofus. The thing that I forgot is that there is a linking corridor between Indy and Erebu. And it is here. And like so many things that are confusing about the world of Sudra, there is a power node fragment hidden in the wall for no apparent reason. And with that, our exploration of Erebu is complete. Folks coming over from the Free Enterprise channel, I hope you are doing well. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend. I hope that you are ready for the tail end of Axiom Verge. We return to Absu, the ocean. It is quiet and still and full of hidden secrets within its depths. In this room, in addition to the pink giant diatoms, we find purple giant diatoms, which, well, we don't really need them for anything. Thank you, Anonymous Cheerer, for the 100 bits. And thank you, I do want to say, to Edgecase Collective for putting on this wonderful Fringe Festival. And even though it was a random draw, I do really appreciate being allowed to show one of my favorite games in such detail and with such care. Behold the data bomb. Not to be confused with the address bomb, which is incredibly powerful. The data bomb is fine. We did find ourselves another note. It is a transcription of a conversation between two of Athos' variants. One asking the other, "Who are you?" To which the first one responds, I am Tilal, the warrior, the second boss that we fought. What are you doing here? Udughul. What does Udughul mean? Unintelligible. What does it look like then? Unintelligible. Is Telal an Udughul? No. What is Telal? Unintelligible. What happened to Athatos? I am Athatos. But you just said you are Telal. No response. How can you be Athatos if you are Telal? I am Telal. Who do you think I am? Athatos. Why did you attack me? No response. Do you remember attacking me? Tilal attack. Demon. If you were to count off the variants that we've fought already in the game, you could consider that Sudra would be A2, with A1 being Athatos Prime, and Tilal being A3, as mentioned in the note. Then Uruku is A4, and Girtab is A5. Vision isn't real, so we skip that one. Ukhu would be A6. And there's really only one other variant that we meet in the game. There's only one other variant that we'll meet who could be typified as A7. I wonder who A8 and A9 were, or if in fact there were clones that we just never meet. They died before the beginning of the game, and numbering them the way that I numbered them is just not correct. Hello, Elsinova. One thing that is worth noting is Elsinova's eyes were closed before, but they appear to be open now. Is that really a change in Elsinova's state, or is it merely a change in the way that I perceive Elsinova's eyes? I don't know. Good night, Ken. Thank you so much for attending. As we return to the catacombs, a place that we've been quite a long time ago, we're now able to pass through a wall and pick up a note. Plan B. I realize I've failed in our primary objective, but please hear me out. I didn't just kill Katrahaska's body. I used the gate breaker. We have a fresh set of nanogates to do with whatever we please. Given what we recently learned about the Sudran rebirth chamber, we could use this to our advantage. In fact, it may be better than my original plan. We would control him. Trace is a clone of Athatos made by the Rusalki using Katrahaska's nanogates. And made to do the work of disposing of Athatos, the destroyer of Sudra. We emerge in a lower cavern portion of Absu that we have not been to before, picking up a range node, size node, one of those, that changes either the size of our projectiles or how far they fly. And by moving back into the prison, we are able to explore a little bit more of the undercarriage of Absu. But this does bring us, of course, back to the place with the bodies. We'll skip past these. It's grotesque. We won't stay here long, except that there's a little bit more information hidden here in a tunnel. One more note, and I don't know if you've noticed the pattern, but what color and what shape a note is tells you who it's by. These green notes are by the Rusalki. These kind of dark blue pads, or gray and pink pads, are by Athatos and variants, The slabs are by the Sudrans, and this faded note is by Trace before becoming Athetos. I forgot to read the note. The storm. This is where we learn what it is that the Rusalki were asking for. You barely understand the technology that surrounds you, yet claim to protect it. It will crush us all once it fails. At least grant us access to your rebirth chambers. Do that, and I will consider being less bitter over what came before. The thing that came before was the Rusalki becoming trapped by the priesthood on Sudra. Eventually, the Rusalki were given the thing that they wanted. In this journal page, we find that one of Athetos' variants describes a psychic link with the variant Zeder. It calls itself Zeder. I don't know how I know this, but I do. I'm not sure how long I can last. I lose more and more each passing day. Sound is a deafening throb. Sight is a kaleidoscopic fire. Smell and taste open up entire worlds of terror. The worst is touch, a tingling, writhing, itching mass. It is expanding, supplanting. There won't be anything to save when it's done. The process of becoming a variant is horrifying. This is what Trace, Athetos, does to his own self, his own clones that have their own humanity and sentience and feelings. He destroys them casually to turn them into monsters. Completely apathetic to what they go through in the process. There is, I believe there are 2 more notes lingering in Abzu. That will reveal ever so slightly more. One is in this room, and I forgot it. It is here. There is one more Rusalka note. This is a note from Veruska, presumably to Elsinova, possibly about Ophelia. It talks about its target playing Puppet Master and then wanting them to be hers, which is very much Veruska's way of talking about things. We're going to embed ourselves in some walls to get through things a little bit faster. And the last note that we picked up here is on drones. Athetos has disabled our drones. This one is operating on battery power. My own blood is failing me. If you want to go forward with Ophelia's plan, now is the time. I say why not? We may die regardless, but this way is a bit more interesting. Oh, absolutely. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Now, we're going to visit the rebirth chambers that we haven't been in because I did say I was going to show everything, but frankly, what's left of Abzu is not really that interesting. There are a few more shrubs here and in a hidden corridor on a dais that, well, why is this here? Who built this? Is the inertial pulse. It fires this slow-moving, kind of spiky, thorny beam around. It's frankly not very interesting. one wonders who put it together and for what purpose, and why they hid it on a dais in the middle of nowhere in a cavern in Absu, full of squids and jellyfish and... Well, in any case, we'll return to Absu one more time later, and actually not in the too distant future. As we return to Z, there are a few more things of interest here. One is just that there's something in here. I believe it's a power node fragment, if I'm not mistaken. But the other thing that's a little bit interesting in here is the other syringe. And so now, since we're at full health, we have top tentacles in addition to bottom tentacles. So many tentacles. Just so many tentacles. It's interesting to revisit Z, partially because there's quite a bit just like jammed in random places that you wouldn't have thought. Like, there's a health node fragment in a tunnel through these steamworks, and just, again, who put that there? In this, off to the side, here are these parasitic bushes that we haven't seen since Ekrama. They exist in exactly three. They exist in exactly two places in all of Sudra. They exist in that room. They exist in Green Hell in Ekrama. And they exist in one other room in Z. Why are they there? How do they get around? How do they reproduce? What happens when you glitch them? That, apparently. That is what happens. Quad tentacles. Sorry, it is not always the case that I am on the up and up with what's going on in chat. This room, which was very dangerous before, is now a walk in the park as we skate right through. Oh. In this deep cavern here, full of ghouls, full of the last remnants of the lives of Sudra, there is yet another strange dais. But as we climb a little farther, we do find something that's interesting. Holed up in the ceiling here is a note. And on this tablet is a security notice. The intruder who commandeered the Storm Talisman is suspected of releasing a plague. This is Athatos, who has withdrawn to the breach attractor and released a plague. Attempts to negotiate with the intruder have failed, as has the use of force. Evacuation has been thwarted by the storm itself. Until we understand this affliction, we are requesting that people remain in their homes and keep away from public areas. Well, that hits home a little hard right now, but we'll leave Trace in that spot and drop our drone down to explore this shaft that has these magenta rollers that are slightly stronger variants of the green rollers that we've seen before. We now return to Uruku's chamber. The third creature that we fought in this game, in this world, to turn power filters on. And now we obtain a little bit more health and a little bit more force. We're almost... You forgot about the hindsight? Yeah. This back shaft over here leads up to Indy. So earlier, if you were here for it, we backdoored here into the void. With the red coat, it is no longer easy, although it is technically possible to perform that same maneuver. Which is a little strange, but you know, whatever. The only place that we have left to explore in Z is this maintenance shaft. This maintenance shaft is staffed by these magenta rollers. When corrupted, they become slow, but otherwise they simply take more hits and do more damage. This is the only other place in Sudra that the parasitic shrubs appear. And deep within this, we find two things of somewhat interest. As we navigate through these lava-filled and stony maintenance tunnels, we find one more Rusalki note. One more Rusalki note. English. Thought long ago succumbed to evolution's merciless twisting lever seems to be with us once again. And back here we find the Vorange, the second to last sub-program for the Axiom Disruptor that we will find in the game. The Vorange fires this very cool looking, but not particularly useful, branching laser sweep. But it looks really cool. With that, we have cleared out the entirety of Z, and now we return to Absu to visit Spider Heck. Frozen, I skipped over poll number 10, and in fact, we won't be running that one. Can you just go to poll 11? That is the poll of now. We return to Absu for one more thing. This tunnel system here leads us to a place we have not been before. Up here is an entrance from Absu into Indy. And down here is Spider Heck. Run 11 now, yes, thank you. Look at how many spiders there are in here. Heck. We missed something. I know what we missed. Gosh, that was careless. Well, that's all right. I have a little idea. There's one part of Absu that we missed. We're gonna go back. I'm gonna go back because we have the time for it, we have about 45 minutes left in the tour, and I will do my darndest to get you everything that is coming to you in this tour, I promise. But, so you shouldn't worry about missing out on anything. I won't let that happen. We are actually going to cover just about all of the ground. So, we're going to grab a few things in Ukinna, since we're here, since we're back here. The note that we just picked up is the Outsider. The Outsider, interestingly, mentions another, probably Rusalka, named Drushka. But we don't know who Drushka is. This is a note between two Rusalki about Ophelia, who is presumably the Outsider. It appears to be between Elsinova and Veruska. In this little corridor, we find another note, "My lovely." This is a note from Veruska, presumably to Oraka, who she is tormenting with her dreams. We're going to go ahead and grab some quick hits. All the greatest hits. And then save warp. At which point we will go ahead and explore the last portions of Absu that we missed. I guess I'll go this way. It's hard to tell which way will be faster to take you. But it's always more fun to dash. We arrived back in Erebu briefly, only on our way to Absu. Only because the place that we are trying to go in Absu is very close to the place that we want to be in Erebu. The place that we want to be in Absu is very close to the place where we show up in Erebu. So we will take this moment to breathe briefly. Let's quiet our minds by using grappling hook. So, I don't think that I explained this earlier, but if you grapple overhead while you are standing on a downward door, and then you go down through the door, then you move through the door much more quickly than you normally would. An interesting side effect of this is that if you transition areas that way, the background music for the area you transition into doesn't load for a while. Another interesting thing about this game is that when you launch an address bomb, it actually slows down the game's internal timer, including the stop clock. Hey, Jen. And if you do this and then pick up an item, then the item get animation is actually incredibly slow. The universe has slowed down. Here, let me show it to you again. Slow motion. This area of the world is the attic. This area of Absu, this little tucked away little space. And this right here concludes our tour of Absu. We have now visited everywhere in Absu that we can possibly visit and collected everything that exists in Absu. I will double check to make sure that I am showing you accurately, but I believe that so far the only thing... Yes, that is correct. There are a few places in Ukinna that we have not explored, but we have collected everything here. And the easiest way to get back to the places in Ukinna, way up at the top of Sudra that we haven't been, is grapple nonsense. Everybody loves grapple nonsense. Now this time, we are perfectly capable of walking out this door because we are no longer hallucinating in a way that would confuse the universe into crashing. And so... we reach the very heights, and behold, this is Elsinova's combat body, taken from the silo in Eden where we saw it earlier. It has a snake-like presence, blades on its undersides, gigantic turrets along the side of it. Look how large it is. It extends well past the bottom of this chamber. The Rusalki are enormous and powerful. They're something to be feared. And with this, we have leave, finally, to enter Mar Uru, the absolute highest point in Sudra. Mar Uru is the fortress where Athatos has holed himself away. In here, we have a number of interesting guardians. This is a T-sentry, or, as Trace likes to call them, TIE flighters. When corrupted, they'll just move in whatever direction you move. Any direction. If you duck, they'll move down. If you point up, they'll move up. If you move left or right, they will move left or right. They are very interesting, but they will fire their lasers whenever you get close. And their lasers are devastating. They're meant to deal damage to even the most fortified traveler. There are no foyers in Mar Uru. There is no respite. There is no obvious tell aside from the crimson red door presaging a mortal enemy. Lady Linalia, thank you so much for the raid of 6. We proceed into the Sentinel chamber. Now, a fun fact about Sentinel is it's not necessary to fight Sentinel. We could basically just skip Sentinel if we were so inclined. But what fun is that? So we're going to reset a little bit and actually show you, as part of this tour, how to fight your very own Sentinel. Poor Sentinel indeed. One of several of the bosses in this game that you do not have to fight, strictly speaking. And I'm going to go ahead and fight it anyway. Now, the important thing about Sentinel is that it drops these squigglies, the same squigglies that are random from the little yellow sponges in Z. And the best way to not get hit by those is just to keep dashing, because your dash makes you invulnerable for a while. Because Trace's dash makes him invulnerable for a while. Now, we're not going to wait for Sentinel to fully explode before we start exiting the screen, even though we did defeat Sentinel. These sentries are actually really interesting. So they look like the ones that are in Ukin-Na. They're much more powerful, of course, but a funny thing about them is that when you corrupt them, they will follow you between rooms. And so if you place them correctly, you can walk into this room and have them hit this switch for you and disable it. Now, of course, that's not strictly speaking necessary because we're... Oop, did I just do the wrong thing? I just did the wrong thing. 1 second. I need to fix this. I did something silly. It is not strictly speaking necessary to disable that laser barrier. And the reason for that is that we have a grappling hook, so we can just do this. Because the thing that breaks reality more than anything else is a grappling hook. Sprite Guard, the developer, singular, there's only one. His name is Tom Happ. He is American, but he did a lot of folklore research. So there's a number of, there's like another reference as well to a different name for them that's kind of derived from Sumerian and also like follows a similar like water derivation, water fish derivation. Again, there is no foyer into this, and this boss does not need to be fought, but this is the last variant, Zedderhul, a much more powerful version of the Zedder variant that we fought at the very beginning of the game. And we're going to destroy it. And we're going to leave. Now, it may look like there's only one way to go in this room. And you would be forgiven for thinking that the only way to go is up. But in fact, there is yet one more note hidden back here. Somehow there is a new variant on Sudra, and he's working for the Rusalki. He's young, more importantly, he has the address disruptor. If you can still read this, kill him. He can undo everything we've worked for. I still haven't determined where he came from. If there is some alternate passage into the breach, we absolutely must find it. I am going to make at least 2 new variants to deal with this. It is believed that the 2 new variants that are referenced in that note, one of them is Zedderhul, the thing that I destroyed, and the other is the aborted clone that we saw in Eden that was not finished. Again, there is a glitch puzzle in here, but we're not going to bother with it because we have a grappling hook. And buried down in the bottom of this side passageway is our final sub-program for the Axiom Disruptor. This is the reverse slicer. It looks kind of cool. It's sort of boomerangy. It is not very useful. The end of the world is almost upon us. There is only a small portion of Sudra left to explore. And here we see Disco Hell. These sentries, these balls firing lasers in all directions, are called Omni-Sentries. But Trace's name for them is a little bit more on point. They're called Disco Balls. Tucked into a little ventilator shaft over here. Reverse slicer, isn't that just glue? Thank you, Walk, Made, Walk, Heard. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading. There's one last note. Drushka's suspicions were correct. Rebirth logs show that a man named Athatos came here once before, hundreds or possibly thousands of years ago. We've now collected everything that there is to collect in every... Wait, I didn't get all of the map tiles in Ukanna. Oh, I know why. Well, good news. We have a little time. Because we have about 30 minutes, we're actually going to show you what it looks like to downclimb Mar Uru before we save warp all the way back up here. Downclimbing is actually significantly more perilous than upclimbing, because many of the tricks... This week's years old when your name... realized your name actually parsed to Mad Ewok Herd. It doesn't... It definitely does not parse that way if you don't have the benefit of capitalization. But that makes much more sense than Made Walk Herd. All right. As we back ourselves out as quickly as we possibly can to explore a rebirth chamber that we haven't been in, because I said I would show you everything, and I'm... always think it was Made Walk Herd. Exactly, yes, that's... Though, at first, because I didn't read all of the letters accurately, I thought that it was Made Work Hard. You kind of like Made Walk Herd. That's wonderful. I promised I would show you everything, and I have not shown you this rebirth chamber yet. Behold, the last rebirth chamber on Sudra that you have not seen. There is nothing special about this rebirth chamber at all, except that it is the last one that you are seeing. Now, I am going to show you something a little bit more special. If you just give me a hot minute to do it correctly. Come on. There we go. Now... in an alternate universe, the final confrontation of this game is very, very different. The final confrontation of the game as it stands involves destroying this battery that's below me while being hassled by these beholder sentries, or as Trace likes to call them, donuts. But in fact, as you can see, off to the side here, there is a whole other massive room with something enormous in it. And if we just come down into this room, we can see that there is a door that was supposed to lead off into the column that we ascended into the final fight from. Look at this. Look at this enormous thing. It looks like a Rusalki. It is not, of course. It has weird collision properties. And so we can run up it in all sorts of interesting ways. And I was actually able to embed myself up there a little bit. But this was originally supposed to be the final encounter of the game. Now, it's not possible to actually escape from this room once you're in it. But that was meant to be a combat body that Athetos was in, or a Rusalki that you fought, or something. I actually don't know what that creature is, really. But in another universe, that is what we encounter at the end of our journey. Now, I want to show a few particular things about this. So one is the donuts themselves. These beholder sentries are capable of being glitched, but only with an address bomb. They can be destroyed, but they will respawn, and they make an awful lot of noise. And you'll see that they respawn now. If you look, Athetos is actually floating inside some blue liquid hooked up to a bunch of tubes. This symbol up here looks like an A and a V, like Axiom Verge. And also, if you look at the Sudran key, it also has that same diamond shape. The Axiom Disruptor, or not the Axiom Disruptor, gosh darn. The Breach Attractor, which is this thing, was considered very important to the Sudrans, and so it shaped a lot of their iconography. Unfortunately, in order to clear out this we simply blow up this battery 3 times. And every time we blow up one of these power generators, Elsinova will be able to come closer and attack the Breach Attractor. A new power generator will spawn, we'll blow it up, Elsinova will appear again and fire on the Breach Attractor. And we'll destroy one more battery. And now you can see the cracks in the Breach Attractor. She dives through one more time, completely destroying the device, and fires an incredibly powerful beam from her mouth cannon, which apparently she had a mouth cannon this whole time, and completely annihilates Athetos. Now, if I said that that was everything that Sudra had to offer, I would be lying. And we do still have about 20 minutes left. So I'm going to try and show you something. I'm not sure if I will be able to. But it involves the breach pockets that we talked about Thank you so much for the GGs, everyone. And thank you so much for being here to listen. I really appreciate you all coming. It means a lot to me. So we're going to do our best to find one breach pocket. And there are a few places that they can be. So I'm not 100% sure that we'll be able to find one. And when I say there are a few places they can be, I mean there are literally hundreds of different places they can be. But there are a few tells if we happen to get close to one. For one thing, scan lines will begin to develop on the screen as we get close to a breach pocket. So if we happen to get close to one, then we'll have that to help us identify it. But, you know, it can still be difficult to find where an entrance is. Especially because I'm trying to move relatively quickly in the hopes that that will help increase the chances of finding one in the time that we have remaining. But the faster that I move, the harder it is to see the scan lines if they appear. I'm really glad. I was not sure, honestly, how it would go, how it would be received. And I'm glad that folks have enjoyed this little venture into the weird and vast and really fun world of Axiom Verge. I don't see one here, at least not obviously. I wish I remembered where the breach pockets were on this. I wish there were map markers for them as well, but there aren't. They're not part of the map. They're not considered part of the universe. They're these little extra things. There's one more place that I will check. And I'm like a little bit skeptical that it's actually going to be there because I remember it being there on a different save file I was working with. So the idea that it would be there on two different save files, it seems a little outlandish, but it's technically possible. No, it's not here. I guess I could check the green section, but that's like the last place that I'm gonna try and... That's the last place I'm going to try and look for one. If I don't find it, then I don't find it, and that's fine. As much as it would leave me a little bit sad to leave you without seeing one of the breach pockets, because they're very cool. They're a very interesting part of the game, and the fact that they are these like canon things is really really interesting to me. Let's see, is there one? I thought I saw scan lines over here, but I guess I didn't. All right. We're gonna... Oh, if I wanted to go to the green part, this is actually the long way around. That's fine. There's no harm in it. There's no harm in it. We've got time, but I don't want to leave you all hanging for too long. I don't want to leave you all hanging on a tutu. Okay. So we go down this way. We go down this way. We go over here. This takes us to the green segment. Okay. Nothing there. No scan lines there. No scan lines over here. No scan lines over here. Hunting for these things is usually honestly kind of terrible. So I never like would particularly blame anybody for not finding hidden worlds. I guess it's technically possible that one could be down here, maybe? I don't know where all of the locations are. There's actually a map of them somewhere, but it's not down there. I would know by now. No. Anything over here? Oh, this is just a way up into this. Nope, nothing. Alright, so this is... We have one last place that we'll check, which is just through these next couple of areas. We'll go through this room and see, is there anything over here? Anything on the left side of the room? No. No luck there. And... yeah, there's no place on the map that actually marks their entrances, I guess. Even if you've found them. All right. We're going to wrap the search for secret worlds there. Thank you all so much for joining. This has been a real pleasure. It's been wonderful presenting for you all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Fuzzy Logic. Have a wonderful night and a wonderful rest of your weekend.